Hey everyone, welcome back to another CISO webinar. We've got a really special one for you guys today. This is the Search 2026 halftime show, what's happened and what's next. So the reason we did this one is because one of the biggest things I hear from our agency partners is, oh my gosh, things are moving so quickly in AI search. How do we stay up to date with all the changes? And who are some good people to follow to keep up with all this news? So today I'm super excited for this webinar because not only are we going to dig into all of the major changes that have happened in search so far this year, but we've also got a very special guest joining today to help me do that. So I'd love to give a warm welcome to Mike King. He's a man who probably needs no introduction to most people in the SEO world. But hey, Mike, let's sing your praises a little bit. I have a little write-up. I'm going to cue you in as well. So Mike is the CEO and founder of iPullRank, which is a New York City-based SEO agency. He's also the two-time winner of Search Marketer of the Year, and he's the founder of SEO Week, which is probably one of the industry's biggest and best SEO conferences out there. I can say that. I got to attend it this past April. It was incredible. I even saw Mike freestyle with his eyes closed, just touching things. It was really cool. Something I want to highlight about Mike is that he comes from a computer science background and really looks at everything with an engineering type lens. So he's the guy that's actually taken the time to read a lot of the patents from Google and understand how search algorithms work at the very technical level. And so what Mike does at his agency is not called SEO or GEO. He calls it relevance engineering. So Mike, do you want to explain your take on this?
Sure. The way I look at it is a lot of SEO is somewhat outmoded, and there's a lot that we can understand about how things actually work by paying attention to what these platforms are doing. So there's open source equivalents to everything that they're doing, and you can take that stuff apart and figure out how things actually work and then apply that to the marketing work that you're doing. So relevance engineering is effectively the confluence of artificial intelligence, information retrieval, which is the science behind search, user experience, content strategy, and digital PR.
I love it. I also want to, pump your tires a bit. Mike's also the guy who publicized Query Fanout. So if you're in the business of doing GEO for your clients, you should probably already know what that is. But if you don't, it's one of the methods that LLMs use to go and retrieve information in their responses, where they take your query and they break it down into multiple subqueries in the background. But you can read more about that in Mike's AI search manual, which I believe is one of the most relevant and comprehensive resources for learning and doing GEO. The final thing I'll say about Mike is that he's got a lot of strong opinions, and they often spark some debate in the search community. So I'm really excited, Mike, to get your unfiltered takes on some of the changes that we're going to walk through today. Do not hold back. It's what's going to make this webinar so great. Mike, did I miss anything about you that you want to share with everyone?
No, I think that was a good summation.
Great. Love it. So fairly simple webinar today. First, Mike and I are going to walk through the key events that happened in the first half of 2026. And we're actually going to group these into 5 different topics. So 1, volatility, 2, reporting, 3, ChatGPT, 4, Google's I/O, which is their annual developer conference, and regulatory pressures as well. And then 5, the agentic web. So that should take up majority of the session, but there will also be a quick regroup, know what to focus on, and we'll get our thoughts and predictions for the second half of the year. And as always, if there's any questions about anything we go over today, go ahead and use the chat box on the right side. We'll have time to answer questions at the end of the session, unless Mike goes off. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And then everybody will also receive a copy of the presentation within the next couple of days. We always upload it as well to our website. Okay, so let's jump into it. We're kicking it off with volatility. So the first half of the year was no walk in the park. We saw tons of changes on both the traditional SERPs with core updates, but also with the way that AI tools were operating. So we'll walk through some of these together. Starting in February, so Profound came out with some cool research in February that found that LinkedIn was the #1 cited domain for professional queries across every major LLM. And then a separate SEMrush study also corroborated this evidence. So they found that LinkedIn was the 2nd most cited domain across their data set. So this is a bit of a switch up from the narrative around earned media's dominance of citations, and it really just highlighted another surface that we need to think about when we're optimizing for AI search engines. And this makes a lot of sense because obviously LinkedIn profiles and company pages, they carry high trust with LLMs. So I'm curious, Mike, what's your take on this? Are you seeing LinkedIn as a highly cited dominance across your client base? What's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way I think about this is it's really about your content ecosystem. And the way I talk about it is about your shared, owned, and earned properties. And so, LinkedIn being one of the shared properties, what we see is that LinkedIn posts, so like when you're writing articles on LinkedIn, they work like gangbusters. Like I've seen clients publish things and like they become the first part of the response in a ChatGPT. So it's still valuable. It's still something that should be a part of your, bucket of tactics. And it tends to be like one of the quicker ways to get in there. And I would also say in a similar way, YouTube also works really well too.
Yeah, YouTube, especially with Google search. I know, obviously, because they own the platform, but awesome. All right. In the following month, Google began rolling out its first core update of the year. We love the core updates. This rollout took 2 weeks to complete and officially wrapped up on 8th of April. As always, Google didn't really get into the details about what they're changing, but they did say that this was another update designed to better surface relevant, satisfying content for searchers.
Mm-hmm.
This one in particular presented a lot of turbulence within the SERPs. According to SE ranking analysis, nearly 80% of the top 3 results shifted, and almost 1 in 4 top 10 pages fell out of the top 100. Many other analyses saw across the board that niche sites with original research and insights held up, whereas bigger domains that were running AI rewrites of old content got absolutely crushed. None of that surprises me. Mike, I know this one was a couple months ago, but wondering what your take on is this, specifically around maybe the importance of unique, or as we call it, non-commodity content.
Sure. So for us, only one of our clients had got hit by this, and it was like the client that we've been working with for the longest. We actually helped them recover from various algorithm updates over the years, but this one seemed to be like a fundamental difference in what Google wanted to show. So they're in the automotive space and they do like, car reviews and so on. And Google really shifted to showing more of like the local dealerships and then showing the manufacturers, but showing a lot less of the review sites. So in a situation like that, there's not really anything you can do. Like your business model is around reviews, and Google's like, hey, we don't care about that anymore. So beyond that, we didn't see much volatility for our clients. But what I will say is that there's a big gap in the SEO space as far as like this sort of thing, right? Like you've got tools that are tracking kind of like volatility kind of broadly, and then they make these assessments after the fact. They're like, okay, well, these sorts of sites got hit, so this is what happened. That's not necessarily true, right? Like that's correlation. It's not necessarily causation. So what we do for this sort of stuff is that we are tracking the rankings, but on top of that, we're also storing copies of pages for our clients and competitors. We're also extracting features from them. There's a lot of, there's like an array of data points that we look at. And then we're also looking at things like link metrics and other external factors. So then we can do regression models when these sort of algorithm updates roll out, and we can see precisely what was it that Google wanted more of. And so again, for most of our most of our clients, there wasn't a problem. Like they, continue to improve. But this one client for this one space, it's like Google just switched the needle around what they wanted moving forward. And that client doesn't have it. So they saw a dramatic drop in organic performance.
Dang, giving us some insight into the secret sauce, building all of these fine-tuning points algorithms. I love that. Cool. Well, let's move over to Google Search Console impressions error. This was a big one too. On the 3rd of April, Google confirmed that they had a logging bug in Search Console that had been over-reporting impressions since the 13th of May, which is almost a full year, which is insane. Like, how do you go that long without noticing? So clicks were not affected, but because impressions were inflated, click-through rates appeared lower than they actually were throughout that period. And Google said historical data would not be corrected. So any click-through rate analysis or benchmarking from that window was effectively unreliable. Mike, do you think this was a genuine accidental bug, or could there have been something more cheeky going on with Google to make themselves look better?
I think it was an actual bug. I think that they have been a bit of a mess for the last 2 years because they've been so heavily focused on AI on everything. I think the resourcing for these teams, and GSC has never been a largely resourced tool. Like it's, a lot of the features and functionality are so far behind what you get out of GA and things like that. And they've had like indexing problems. There's been so many problems with Google search over the last 2 years. So I think this is legitimately a problem that happened. But it also brings up the point that accuracy in analytics is not what people believe it is. Like you look at things as like this source of truth, and they're not always right. Like even if you look at regular analytics, no matter what you use, whether it's GA or Adobe or whatever, they're not accurate. What they are is precise, because there's a lot of situations where a user may not have JavaScript on, or they may be blocking cookies or whatever, so they get double counted or not counted or whatever. So you can't really trust any of these data sources to be completely accurate. You can only count on them to be precise. But in this case, we found that GSC wasn't even precise in that time frame. So it's good to keep a pulse on this sort of stuff, so you do have an understanding, because like a lot of people have been reporting like, oh, impressions have jumped, and then they were assuming it was a function of all the generative AI stuff. But no, it was just a bug. So it's good to know that, so you can like update your assumptions, but you just can't really count on accuracy.
So fair. And I wonder how big of a difference it would have made to that great decoupling as well. Like, is that whole thing a farce? I don't know,
Exactly.
Crazy times. All right. Moving on. So ChatGPT referral jump that happened in May. So on May 7th, OpenAI made a quiet algorithmic change that now automatically linked brand mentions to their website's homepage directly within the ChatGPT response, which was great. Yeah. So now when a user searches for specific recommendations for brands, they can now click through directly to the website. And that was not something that they did before this. So SimilarWeb tracked the result. ChatGPT referral traffic jumped approximately 157% week on week. So I don't know how much merit the zero-click argument has anymore, but this is the clearest example of why monitoring AI platforms actively really matters. The impact was real and measurable, but there was no official announcement from OpenAI. I've heard some whisperings from folks in the SEO community. I think it was Josh Bliscoe that said, this is probably a test to get click data for ad modeling. What's your take, Mike?
Well, I think there's two things that happen around the same time. So everything that Josh was saying is right, because Josh is awesome and he's typically right. But this was also around the time, I believe, that ChatGPT 5.4 rolled out, and they started doing site colon searches as a part of the query fan out. Yep. So, it serves both purposes. One, like you have more opportunity to be a part of the response as the brand, but now you also have an opportunity to get that click through as well. So, as we all know at this point, like the referral traffic from these channels is small. It's kind of a rounding error compared to what you're getting from classic organic, but it is better that they are, providing more visibility and more pathways for that traffic to happen. As far as it being, a test for ads, it's hard to say. I'm also not convinced yet that ads in this environment actually work. And I think it's more like a novelty that people are just trying to get on top of, because they're like, hey, okay, if there's ads here, cool, that's an easier way for us to get in there. But, I don't know that they yield anything to the level that we are used to with like Google ads.
No, not nearly as much control, and it's all contextual at the moment. I've heard personal responses from people saying that it's pretty garbage, but hey, OpenAI's got to make their money somehow.
Yeah, I hope they figure it out.
Yeah, hopefully. Otherwise, it's not looking good for us in the AI bubble. All right. On May 21st, we saw another core update, less than 2 months after the March update, which was completed on June 2nd. So this one ran simultaneously with Google I/O, which was deliberate. It specifically targeted the scaling problem of programmatic AI-generated web spam. The clearest signal in this update was which kind of sources Google now chooses to show more. So for instance, Reddit's share of the top 3 positions rose to 10.24% after May. And then 2 core updates in under 8 weeks made it a particularly difficult reporting period for agencies. Anything jump out to you around this time, Mike?
So I believe that this one and the next one are actually tied together. And, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding of how algorithm updates roll out, because what they do is they have a variety of things that are happening. Like, it's not just one single thing that they're adjusting. So it can be a variety of teams that are all pushing something around the same time. And just like any other software company, they may roll components of it back, and they may further adjust certain components that came out. And so a lot of people in the SEO space love to talk about, this idea of what they call Mount AI, where you have this huge, hockey stick of growth because you're using generative AI content across, millions of pages, and then it peaks and then it drops off, right? That's not just a function of it being generative AI content, because Google cannot reliably detect generative AI content with reasonable confidence. Like, they have a lot of false negatives, lots of false positives. So they can't use that as a single signal to demote content. Instead, what they do is what they do across everything else. What they do is they're using user signals to indicate whether or not the content is good. So the reason why you see that spike, that hockey stick that I'm talking about, is because when Google sees new content, they compare it to existing content, and they have like a site quality score. And they're like, okay, well, this looks like this content, which we rate a 6. So let's make everything that we've just seen here a 6, and let's see how it performs. And so the thing about generative AI content is that users can tell. And so typically Gen AI content has high bounce rate, low time on site, which are, the equivalents of signals that are used in information retrieval to determine whether or not something is good, like whether or not it was a successful session. And so what I'm talking about here is this is a UX problem. It's not a problem of you've used a bunch of generative AI. It's a problem that you've slapped it on a website in a way that nobody wants to actually read it. They're not getting any value out of it. So my point here is I think that these two updates were them going after that more, and then them refining it a bit more as well.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, speaking of spam, so Google had a 2026 June spam update on the 24th, and that ran for roughly 2 days. And while no new spam policies were announced, their existing spam policies already explicitly cover attempts to manipulative generative AI responses. And these were the content types that took a hit. So, websites churning out massive amounts of automated, unoriginal AI. But I think that ties in nicely to what you were just saying, Mike, about it more being an engagement signal versus, them actually being able to tell that it was AI generated. All right, let's move over to reporting. We saw some of the biggest changes ever this year, especially when it comes to measuring AI search visibility, even if it's still not where we want it to be. But we'll start with Bing, because in February, Microsoft launched its AI performance report in Bing Webmaster Tools, which was the first-party AI search reporting tool from any major platform. They came out with something before Google did. Obviously, ChatGPT doesn't give us any information. So this tool provides the data to help validate which pages and content are being used as citations in real co-pilot AI answers. It also gives information around the key grounding terms, or in other words, those query fanouts that AI used to retrieve content that was cited. So this was officially the first tool of its kind to help us spot opportunities to improve clarity, structure, or completeness on pages that are indexed but less frequently cited. And we can see that they even expanded their features. If we look at the end there, fast forwarding to June, they added 4 new capabilities. I think they also announced that at SEO Week.
They did, yeah.
Yes, they did. Intents, topics, citation share, and compare as well. So if you're working with clients, you want to get real insights, definitely recommend using Copilot. Check it out there. Moving forward into May, Google Analytics added a dedicated AI assistant channel that automatically identifies and labels traffic arriving from AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. So if you or your clients, you have a GA4, it doesn't require any additional setup anymore, which can be kind of, daunting sometimes. It already applies to all existing GA4 properties. So you should be able to see exactly which AI tools are sending referral traffic to your site now. Previously, you would have had to do it with like a crazy regex code, and somebody would have had to set it up. So this was a nice feature. Something worth noting here, Perplexity is actually absent from this reporting. So this referral traffic still lands in the referral segment. So you're still going to need to do a custom channel group if you want to catch that one. Moving on to May, on the e-commerce side of things, Google announced native AI reporting capabilities for Merchant Center, which will give us a taste of how products are surfacing in Google's AI-powered shopping results. So more specifically, it will report on things like share of voice, so how are you doing compared to your competitors, shopping funnel performance, and then even product term and attribute insights. So unfortunately, this isn't fully live yet. I was seeing some posts on LinkedIn this morning about some people starting to get some additional stuff. It is being rolled out over the coming months, but definitely gives us signals where Google is heading. Have you seen any of these updates yet, Mike, on Merchant Center?
No, I actually don't live in Merchant Center anymore. It's been a long time. Yeah.
Fair enough. Leave that to the team, I guess. Moving over to Google Search Console, on the 3rd of June, they launched a dedicated generative AI performance report. So for the first time, we're able to see our impressions inside AI overviews, AI mode, and discovers AI features broken out from regular search data.
That report is a joke.
This is what I was going to ask you about this. So they don't get click data. There's no query data yet. Not really useful at the moment. So tell us.
I want to give a shout out to Krishna Madhavan from Bing. He is fighting the good fight. Like, the reports that they're giving in Webmaster Tools are fantastic. And it really just reinforces a lot of the things that I've been saying about how things work, about what you need to be focusing on. And, you know, I love that what he's doing is pushing everyone else forward. Like, I don't think we would have ever gotten this GSC report had Bing not created it first. And it's my hope that they then add these similar features. But what Google has been doing is saying, like, hey, you don't have to do anything special for AI search. Just do what you always do for regular SEO. But everyone else that actually creates these platforms is saying the opposite. They're saying what I'm saying. They're like, no, query fan out is important. Like, all these different nuances of how the index is used is different. And you're getting that directly from Bing. You're not getting that from some like small company that no one's heard of. It's not like Neva, rest in peace to that search engine or whatever. Like, you're getting it from the long held competitor. And it just reinforces everything that we need to do in order to get the visibility that we want.
Nice. Okay. Well, yeah, that covered all my questions for you on that one. Moving on to the next segment, which is all about ChatGPT. So we kind of alluded to this already, but of course, ChatGPT did something we were all anticipating. They officially launched advertising on the 9th of February. So currently ads show only to free and go tier users. Paying subscribers don't see them. The platform launched at a $60 CPM with a $200,000 to $250,000 minimum spend. So this is pretty much invite only for large brands and holding company agencies. Now that floor dropped fast. By April, it was $50,000. And on May 5th, OpenAI eliminated the minimum entirely and opened a self-serve ads manager to all US businesses, and slowly is rolling out to other countries as well. Is that something you guys do at iPullRank?
No, we don't. We have partners that do that sort of stuff, but we do report on it. Like, Profound has great reporting. They have like a whole ads section now, which is cool. Yep. But what I do want to say is that, again, I don't necessarily believe that these ads are the right modality for chat, right? Like, I think the whole like pay per transaction model probably makes a lot more sense when like the user wants the agent to go out and buy something on their behalf. I think that's going to be the model that catches on, because these ads are just not good. And then there's the big like brand safety problem that's not answered really here either, right? Because like, if someone asks something bad about your brand and then your ad pops up, you don't want that next to ChatGPT saying like, oh yeah, I read this Reddit thread that says this brand sucks. Like, you don't want that to happen. And there's no indication that they've solved that problem. So I just don't believe in these ads until I'm proved otherwise.
Right. And I haven't dug into this, but is it still like a cost per click model? Like, if your ad shows up next to some negative stuff about your, like, potentially you're paying money if they click onto the
well, ad. It's not even cost per click, it's cost per impression.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could be paying for all these impressions that are saying that your brand is trash.
Yikes. Okay.
And there's no reporting. Like, what are they reporting? Like, there's no like, you know, I mean, maybe there is, and it's just not what I've seen yet, but I haven't seen anything robust to tell me like how I've shown up. What are like the equivalent of what you're used to in Google Ads doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense though, because there's so many different variations and ways that the ad can show up, right? So,
but that's also true of Google Ads, right? Like you get the query report, which shows you all the queries that you showed up for. That's not different from like you seeing all the different conversations that you showed up in.
Yeah, but I guess the difference is with Google, it's like specific keywords, whereas like AI tools could be so contextual, so different. Like they would have to figure out a way to sort of put everything together in a way that they could summarize everything, if that makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, I think they could reduce it, you know, like using entities or whatever. But like again, there's just not any visibility yet.
Yeah, totally fair. Okay, for the first time since their launch, ChatGPT's global market share among all LLMs dropped below 50% in March 2026, according to analytics firm Sensor Tower's State of AI report for 2026. By May, it had settled at 46.4%. Claude, Gemini, and Perplexity all gained ground in this period. I would say a big reason for this was because of OpenAI's affiliation with the Department of Defense. I know a lot of people had some problems with that, but also at this time, and we're going to talk about it in a bit, Claude really started to rise in popularity. I know that I personally prefer Claude. Mike, do you?
Yeah, Claude's is better.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, everyone got better. Like even Gemini had gotten better around that time. I wouldn't say that they're like a leading provider right now, but Claude is just dramatically better, and Claude co-work is so valuable. And then with like the announcement of skills, and then you've got OpenClaw. So there's like so many reasons to use Claude as your daily driver. That's like your operating system for this sort of stuff. And, you know, that's the way that I always thought this stuff was going to go, where it's like you use it as a central operating system for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been super helpful. And I saw where we met in Miami, you gave a great presentation on how you're sort of using that and other things to create efficiencies in your agency, which was really, really cool. Etienne, yes, Claude is winning. I agree. Okay, on the 4th of March, ChatGPT pulled back from its instant checkout feature just 5 months after it launched due to way too many infrastructure hurdles. So, you know, if we think about it, e-commerce is messy. The system struggled with basic retail needs like promo codes, shipping choices, real-time inventory tracking, plus only a handful of merchants actually signed up. And most importantly, user behavior doesn't really match that vision, right? Most of us love using ChatGPT to research and compare products. But when it's time to buy, probably a lot of us still prefer checking out directly on the brand's website because you know that you're going to get a secure, more seamless user experience. So instead of trying to be a digital marketplace, ChatGPT is really leaning into what it does best, which is acting as your ultimate product discovery and comparison assistant. Maybe one day they'll get there, though. All right. And speaking of AI shopping, a large-scale study done by Peak AI that analyzed over 40,000 ChatGPT carousel products found that 83% matched organic Google shopping results. So I'm sure that we've all heard that, ChatGPT runs on Bing. It's not the case for shopping, it seems. SEMrush also ran a separate experiment, came to the same conclusion. So if you want to have your product show up in ChatGPT's shopping carousel, you need to have strong structured data, well-maintained product feed, and of course, domain authority. We actually did a whole webinar on this a few weeks ago. There'll be a QR code at the end of this presentation if you want to go back and scan and rewatch that. Anything you want to add to that or this section, Mike?
No.
Okay, moving over to Google I/O and then regulatory pressures. And I know Mike's going to have a lot to say about this section. So we'll start with March, when the headlines were rewritten. Google confirmed they're experimenting with AI-generated headline rewrites in search results. So basically, they're deleting your carefully crafted title tags, replacing them with text written by their own AI. So Google claims this is just a small, narrow test, but I would also take that with a grain of salt. This is exactly the same kind of language they used right before they made AI rewritten headlines permanent in Google Discover. So why does this matter? Well, it completely strips away your editorial control. We're not talking about Google just pulling words from your page anymore. This AI can actually fabricate entirely new phrasing, sometimes completely flipping the sentiment of an article or stripping away critical context. And Google isn't displaying these AI headlines without a label or with a label. So if AI writes a terrible, misleading headline, your audience is going to blame the brand, not Google's algorithm. And this is particularly a problem for things like news publishers and outlets that rely on headlines to hook readers into their story. But Mike, I've got a question, and it's a question I've gotten before from other agencies in our partner club. Is it still worth writing your title tags and meta descriptions in this era if they're just going to be rewritten by Google?
So they have rewritten both of those for a long time. From my perspective, the meta description is not really worth writing because they're going to pull what's most relevant from the page, and that's going to yield a higher click-through rate. But as far as the page title, what you should be doing is ignoring the whole 60-character thing that's been the quote-unquote best practice for a number of years. We've done tests a number of times where we just take the top 3 keywords that are performing in Google Search Console and we append them to the end of the page title. And it always yields like a 10 to 20% increase in click-through rate. And the reason why is because Google just has more to choose from when it rewrites it. So I would say, you don't have to necessarily take the approach that we do, but you should provide more information about the page and the page title than you're used to. So then it has more to choose from. Now, what we don't know is, are they just like summarizing the page and then ignoring everything in your page title? In my experience, it's been that they reduce the page title, not that they like summarize the page. But if they're moving to summarizing the page, then you're just going to want to be more focused on what you're talking about on the page itself.
And I think it was on one of your webinars, if I'm remembering correctly, that we were talking about, or you were talking about how the page title is actually like a first entry point for AI search, right? When they're trying to deduce, okay, which page do I want to reference when I'm doing my query fan out and finding the chunk of content that I want to use, essentially.
Yeah.
So does that change things a little bit here? Like if they're rewriting your page title, are they accessing the Google page title? Are they accessing your original version? Like, how's that working?
So it depends on the source, right? Like if we're talking about Google specifically, then Google's going to see whatever they are providing, right? Like they're going to pull from their own search results. So whatever they have in their search results is what's being used there. Whereas if you're talking about a ChatGPT or Perplexity, there's different data sources that they get it from. So in some cases, it could be Google. In some cases, it could be Bing. In some cases, it could be Search. And they all provide a different level of content. So like Search specifically will extract like the first, 100 words from the page or something like that as well. So it's not just the page title that they're getting. The problem is you don't necessarily know which source they're getting it from. And so you want to like provide as much as you can within the environments that you can, or the tags that you can, I guess. So there's no easy answer to that. I would say the best way to do it would be a more like technical way, meaning that you detect what is the user agent that's accessing the page and then provide whatever is most valuable to them. So for Google, you would give like, let's say 100-character page title so that they can choose from it. If instead it's like Search, okay, well, let's give, a reduced page title that is more aligned with the query that you're targeting. So it needs to be kind of a nuanced approach rather than just like a one size fits all for each channel.
And in order to serve a different experience to the different agents, just for the people on this call, is that done through Markdown? Is that done like how do you do that?
Yeah, so there's a variety of ways you can do that. Let's just use like a simple example in like WordPress. There are like user agent detector plugins where you can specify a different version based on that user agent. So you can say for Bing, here's my page title. For Google, here's my page title. For ChatGPT, here's my page title. But basically what you'd have to do is say, okay, who is accessing this page? And a regular user just gets like, whatever the regular user facing version is. But if it says ChatGPT or ChatGPT bot or whatever the user agent is, serve them that.
Okay. Would that not be considered cloaking in Google's eyes?
So cloaking has a very narrow definition. When you show something different to Google than what you show the user. right? So that is typically like what is on the page itself. Just having a different title tag, I don't think would be enough to trigger some sort of filter.
Okay, cool. Lots of knowledge. Love it. Okay, now in May, Google published official documentation titled Optimizing Your Website for Generative AI Features on this Google Search Central blog under a brand new Generative AI Fundamentals navigation section. So this documentation largely stated that good GEO is just good SEO and largely focused on the importance of, again, non-commodity content and clear technical structure. They also included a section around myth busting where they denounced tactics such as LLMs.txt, as well as chunking. Now, Mike, I know you're a large believer of chunking. There's a whole thing on it in your search manual. And I know that you don't always think Google is truthful in their advice. So what's your unfiltered take here?
So I wrote a blog post about this, and I think it was titled something to the effect of Google's guidance is naive and self-serving, because that's exactly what it is. Like, sure, these are this is guidance for the Google environment, which I don't think is accurate either, but it's really them trying to regain control over the fact that we are moving from a Google-shaped web to an agent-shaped web, meaning that the last 25 years, people have built websites in alignment with the best practices for what works for Google. But now that there are a multitude of players that are treating the web in a different way, we are all moving in this direction of like creating websites that work well within these agents. And so when you say something like LLMs.text doesn't matter, that's not true. It's not true because everyone is using Claude now and Claude uses it. And in fact, if you look in the agentic guide in another section of Google, they say you should have an LLMs.text.
You're spoiling what's coming up. We've got
So, and then on chunking, first let's like add a definition of what chunking is. So there's really two ways or two definitions of chunking. One is what the actual systems do when they decompose your page and look to understand it. They break it into a series of what are called chunks. That terminology comes from information retrieval around retrieval augmented generation. And so they're breaking down your page into a series of chunks, and then they're measuring those chunks against those synthetic queries in the query fan out. And then they're saying, okay, this is relevant, feed it to the language model. Now, when we talk about chunking from a marketing perspective, it's really about like, how do you structure your content in such a way that it works in that environment? Meaning that you're using headings, you're having paragraphs that are about one thing rather than 2 to 3 things or whatever, because it's easier for it to perform in those environments. But it's also easier for a user to consume when you do it that way. So Google says like, oh, you don't have to do that. Like, don't break your pages into like these, microscopic chunks. But if you read their research about what they actually do, everything points to, these atomic units of content that speak about one thing. And so I've written 2 different blog posts about this. One refuting what was said around not needing chunking, like going through all the research, pointing out why it's valuable. And then I wrote the thing about the guidance, which really just like shows how Google is trying to, maintain this control while all these other companies are saying the opposite thing.
I'm just curious, like, what's their goal and like, why would they give that advice to not chunk and not use LLM? Like, how does that serve them?
Because it changes the surface of the web if everybody is doing the thing that it's harder for them to discern like, okay, is this good content versus bad content if everyone is doing the same thing? Right. So it's kind of like Google will tell you to do a thing when it works for them. Like they told everyone, hey, switch your site to the secure protocol and we'll give you a rankings boost. So then everyone did it, and you didn't get a rankings boost because everyone did it, but it made things better for Google. It made it better for them because like user clicks through and they have a secure site that they go to. Same thing with Core Web Vitals. They said like, hey, everybody make your site faster and we'll give you a rankings boost. No one got a rankings boost, but everybody made their site faster. And that made Google's costs go down for crawling. It made their, again, the user experience better as well. So same thing is true of like structured data. Hey, give us all the structured data. We can understand your pages better. We can rank you better. Everyone did it. Nobody really got value out of it because everyone did it. But Google got a stronger signal to make their search engine better. Mm-hmm. So it's the same sort of thing. Like they are guiding us in the way that works for them, not necessarily what works for us.
Got it. Okay, I'm just reading my notes here. Yes, okay. And then also in May, we had Google I/O, which, as we mentioned, that's their annual developer conference. So during this event, Google made its clearest statement yet that search is an AI product now. In fact, Google used the phrase AI-first repeatedly, and they announced the biggest redesign to their core homepage interface in over 25 years, called the Intelligent Search Box. So this transforms the traditional search bar into a flexible, conversational, and agentic AI field. So the SERP that agencies have been optimizing for the past decade looks fundamentally different today. Personally, I think it's a better experience. What about you, Mike?
I want to sidebar real quick. So I wasn't at I/O this year, and I'll tell you why. Because the things that I've been writing have made some key people at Google upset. So I want everyone to know that I'm fighting for you and I'm missing out on opportunities because of it. Now, I think that, what they rolled out at I/O is always obviously important, but it also just signals where they're going, right? Like, I think that, first of all, we're going to see more hyper personalization in search. And I love that they clarify that, like, hey, everything is AI search. That's true. Like, there is no true distinction between how AI search works and classic search. Like, it's all AI search. Like, everything, in fact, generative AI comes from search technology, right? So like, I just really appreciate them saying like, no, this is all AI. And with AI overviews rolling out farther, like you're seeing more branded AI overviews when you didn't see that as much before. And it just, again, continues to clarify, like, this is the direction that they're going. They want to give you an answer because users never wanted 10 blue links.
Right. Okay, we're going to start speeding through some stuff because I think we've got, 15 minutes. We want to leave room for questions if there are any. Okay, so Google expanded its highly cited label, which is a badge that highlights original reporting and primary sources, to more web article links in May. So for PR and comms agencies, this is directly relevant. Earned Media, Incredible Publications gets a visual signal in the SERP that other content doesn't if it's very highly cited. So this is one of the clearest ways that original reporting and third-party coverage translates into search visibility. Moving on to the 3rd of June, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, or the CMA, introduced a new conduct requirement on Google that publishers must be able to opt out of AI overviews, so or any of the AI surfaces. And also having their content used for AI model fine-tuning without losing their standard organic search visibility. So essentially, Google Search Console added a toggle that helps users decide whether the site can appear in and help ground Google's generative AI search features. Any sites that opt out, they're just not going to receive traffic or impressions from these generative AI features. It's being rolled out in the UK first, and then a global rollout is expected to follow. Mike, what's your take on people opting out of Google's AI features?
I think it's a Pyrrhic victory. This is where everything is going. If you opt out, like, I think that's a silly thing, but I think they should be able to.
Yeah.
And I think it should be divorced from classic organic search visibility. And, Google just wasn't doing that, which was smart strategically on their side. But yeah, it's just not fair.
On the 4th of June, Google launched search profiles for creators and publishers, which are essentially dedicated, customizable pages that pull together articles, videos, and social posts in one place with a follow on Google button. So eligibility requires 100,000 followers on YouTube, Instagram, or X, or 300,000 plus on TikTok. So creating a profile doesn't directly affect rankings, but it can trigger or enhance a knowledge panel, which obviously gives us a lot more real estate on the Google search SERPs. Right now, it's US only at launch, but there is, of course, international expansion planned. And this is really relevant for media clients and thought leaders. Just another way for them to take up more real estate on Google SERPs, like I said, but also have all of your accounts connected in one authoritative place. I wonder if this will also support with like, more EEAT and things like that, and help Google connect sort of those entities a little more.
Yeah, I think it's great. I don't like that it requires you to have 100,000 followers just because I don't have that. But I think that's cool.
Yeah. On the 17th of June, the CMA introduced a second requirement called fair ranking. So Google must rank organic search results, including AI overviews, using objective and non-discriminatory criteria. And they must give advance notice of significant ranking changes. So maybe this will mean no surprise core updates or algorithm shifts. It's always like right around Christmas where like people are going on holidays and they're like, oh, the December core update. So now they have to give us warning, apparently. As for rollout, go ahead.
People got to understand that Google has review cycles. There's a review cycle around that time of the year. Like, of course, there's going to be things that hit.
Well, hey, I didn't know that. So giving me insight. As for rollout, they were given a 6-month implementation window. So 2 CMA rulings in 2 weeks is a meaningful shift in regulatory pressure on Google. Mike, would you say things are going to change with the way Google operates with all this pressure, or what do you think?
It sounds unrealistic what they're asking for.
Oh, tell me more.
I mean, objective ranking criteria, like how do you define that? I think that ranking criteria is inherently subjective because it's reflective of what's happening on the internet. So I think it's an unrealistic thing that they're looking for.
Okay. Interesting. All right, moving on to the final section, which is the agentic web. And there's been a lot of movement on this year. So if you're dealing with brands that sell online, this is the section for you. On the 11th of January at NRF, which is the National Retail Federation's annual conference in New York, one of the biggest events in the retail and commerce calendar, Google announced the UCP, Universal Commerce Protocol, which is essentially an open standard for agentic commerce, which is co-developed with Shopify and Walmart and Target, Stripe, and 20 plus other partners. So this is live for eligible US retailers in Google AI mode and Gemini from day one. And the idea is it's a standardized way for AI agents to discover, evaluate, and complete purchases across any retailer. So instead of a user clicking through to websites, comparing prices, filling out shipping forms, their personal AI agent now uses that UCP framework to negotiate and execute the purchase securely. In January as well, at the same time, Shopify announced its agentic plan. We talked about this one in our last webinar, but this is specifically designed for businesses that actually don't use Shopify for their online storefronts, but it then allows them to seamlessly sync their product data into the Shopify catalog so that autonomous AI assistants can find and buy their products as well. So Shopify is really positioning itself as sort of that commerce layer underneath the agentic web, which is pretty cool. UCP hit shopping in March. They expanded to include cart and product discovery capabilities. So essentially, agents can now add one or more products to the cart, and agents can now pull real-time details from the store like variants, inventory, and pricing. And critically, UCP and AI product features began appearing in standard shopping results, so not just AI mode. So this is really the convergence points. The same product data signals that drive traditional shopping visibility are also now powering AI-driven commerce. So clients who maintain clean product feeds, strong SEO, they're going to be ahead. And then we already kind of alluded to this one. In May, Google Chrome team added an LLMs.txt check to Chrome's Lighthouse agentic browsing audit, essentially treating the file as a relevant thing for AI agents navigating websites. But then simultaneously, Google Search explicitly stated that it doesn't use LLMs.txt for training purposes. And in their official guide, they said you don't need to do it. So there's kind of two opposing official statements from Google giving contradictory guidance. So Mike, I know you kind of spoke to it a bit, but what's your take on it? I've seen some SEOs start to come around on LLMs.txt, but I've also seen a lot of pushback and some research that's against it. So what's your take?
Yeah, I think LLMs.txt is worth using at this point. I wouldn't spend a bunch of effort on it, but I would definitely use it. And then the UCP stuff, I mean, that's where all this stuff is going, right? Like shopping is going to become very agentic. Like I said, it's going to be a pay per transaction thing that's really going to drive monetization here. And you've also got the agentic commerce protocol, which is what Stripe and OpenAI developed. So, I keep talking about this idea of machine media, where it's going to be mostly these agents consuming the web on behalf of users. And these are the sorts of on-ramps to make that happen.
Nice. Okay, Claude Cowork. We already kind of talked about this one too, but Anthropic obviously launched Claude Cowork in January, which is an AI agent that can read local files, it can execute code, complete cross-app browser tasks. So this was the first major step toward AI that operates your computer on your behalf, which is pretty cool. And then moving on, Apple and Google announced a multi-year partnership on the 12th of January. So Gemini is going to power Apple Intelligence and also a redesigned Siri. So this rollout is happening in 2 phases. Phase 1 already arrived in the spring, so delivering on-screen awareness, contextual understanding. And phase 2 will be a full conversational Siri, which is coming with iOS 27 in September 2026. So as of this webinar, it's live, but it's only partially live. So for agencies, the implication is that Gemini's citation behavior is becoming even more important, and a brand's visibility in Gemini is increasingly also its visibility through Siri across 2 billion Apple devices. Do you have a take on this, Mike?
I think Siri has been bad for so long, so I think it's good that they finally got something decent in there.
Yeah, I remember when I first started in SEO, which was over 7 or 8 years ago. I remember I was seeing headlines being like, "Oh no, SEO is dead because of the rise of conversational search," and it's here we are so long later, and it's still garbage. All of it is still garbage. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with.
Yeah.
This next one is exciting, and I know that your team's done some cool research on it, which I'm going to get you to speak about. But in January, Google announced personal intelligence. So Gemini and AI mode can now cross-reference your Gmail, your photos, your YouTube history, and search history to give more personalized responses. So search is no longer a shared experience among everyone with a single set of results. Personalization at this level means brand presence across multiple Google surfaces, not just on your website, becomes more important for showing up in responses. So yeah, Gareth did some cool research on this that he unveiled at SEO Week as well. Do you want to tell everyone about it?
Yeah, so one of the things that we had done, or that he led really, was he did an experiment where he had 2 different Gmail accounts. One that was a control where there was no manipulation, if you will, and then another where we sent emails from both fake brands, and we also signed up to mailing lists of real brands. And we looked to see how that impacted the search results. And it does, pretty significantly. I think it was something from the real brands, it was something like a 60% increase in citations. And for the fake brands, they would get mentioned, but no citations. But the whole point is that because they were in emails, they were showing up in AI mode.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I remember seeing the screenshot too, where he was asking about what streaming platform should I use? And it was because you have a 3-year-old daughter named X, you should be using Disney Plus. And I just thought that was so creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it really shows how much AI search is personalized, but also these surfaces are expanding as well. Okay, and then Cloudflare launched a feature that automatically converts HTML to Markdown when an AI crawler requests it, cutting token usage by up to 80%. That was in February. It's worth noting that Google pushed back on the broader trend shortly after. John Mueller called creating parallel Markdown versions of web pages a stupid idea, and argued that HTML conversion is trivial for any crawler and that Markdown strips away structural signals both search engines and AI use to understand the site. So we've seen some debate in the SEO community on this. Mike, we kind of talked a little bit about it or alluded to it, but would you say Markdown is worth it, or is this a genuine place we should listen to Google?
So my position has evolved on this. I originally thought it wasn't valuable because I hadn't seen any impact from it. But what it also does is it speeds up the loading of the page. And we have seen that when your pages are slow, ChatGPT will give up on waiting for it to load. So there can be some value from it.
Cool. Thank you for your input. Okay, we've only got 4 minutes left, so I'm actually going to breeze through the next point. I'll keep it on the screen. Everyone's going to get a copy of this, but it's essentially some tips on what we think agencies should do right now. But Mike, I want to ask you before we move on to questions, do you have any predictions for the remainder of the year?
Just more personalization and everything. And I'm not just talking about, the generative or LLMs or whatever. I think that Google search is also going to become hyper personalized, even in the classic search, like template links as well.
Okay, interesting. And just so everyone's aware, Mike's been pretty good with his predictions. He called the AI Overviews interface. He built his own version of it before it even came out. So listen to this guy because he knows what he's talking about. Just a quick thing before we wrap up. If you're not already part of the SUSO Partner Club, it's a free resource for agencies. You get free access to our team, our SEO team. If you don't have one in-house, you have a help desk to answer any questions that you or your clients might have. We can do free one-on-one training. So I'm teaching agencies the foundations of SEO and GEO. So you can learn all about this query fan out and reg and all this technical stuff that we talked about on the call. That's absolutely essential to GEO. And then we also do free analysis and reports. They can be white labeled in your branding. So why not join? It's completely free. I'd love to work with you. And finally, we've got some resources to share on the screen while we get to some questions if there are any. I mentioned on our last webinar that went over how to make e-commerce stores more discoverable for AI search through structured product data and clean feeds. So you can scan that QR code there and rewatch that if you like. We also have to give a shout out to iPullRank's AI Search Manual. Like I said, it's the most comprehensive GEO research resource out there. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about it for anyone?
It is 24 chapters, and we keep it up to date on everything you need to know about AI search. There's no vagaries. We walk you through, like, here's how it works, here's what you do, here are tools. Like, it's everything you need to know. Yeah. And it's a big reason why we show up before everybody in your ChatGPTs and Geminis and so on.
Yeah, it's really comprehensive and good. And they have a TLDR version, so you don't have to dig through the whole thing. And then, of course, a link to our SUSO Partner Club. So if you haven't joined already, like I said, it's completely free.